Shalom, everyone, and welcome. We're so grateful you're here with us today for what promises to be a powerful and truly memorable time together.
Amen.
On behalf of our entire Bridges for Peace team, it is an honor to welcome you to this special broadcast coming from Jerusalem with Patrick and Rebecca Verbeten. Whether you're tuning in from your church, your living room, your car, work, or somewhere else, thank you for making space in your day to be a part of this moment.
We are gathered today because God is moving in Israel, and we believe He's inviting each of us to be a part of it. In just a few moments, we'll be hearing from Jerusalem, where Patrick and Rebecca Verbeten will be sharing what's happening on the ground, and you'll also hear some exciting announcements.
Now, many of you have been faithful supporters, prayer warriors, and partners in this mission for years, and we want to take this moment to thank you for your generosity. We hope as you watch this webinar, you'll get to see some of the fruit of that faithfulness. What's happening on the ground in Israel is exciting. Just a couple of quick things. This webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch or share it afterwards. And we'd love for you to let us know where you're joining from.
Yeah.
Go ahead and type in your city or country into the chat now. It's always a joy to see just how far and wide everyone on this webinar is tuning in from.
We also have a great praise to share from earlier this month. Our Night of Hope was truly a special moment. In 16 locations across 12 states, people gathered to remember the lives tragically taken on October 7th, 2023, and the days that followed. Together, we also stood in unwavering solidarity with Israel and the Jewish communities across our nation. Whether you've joined in person or through the live stream, you experienced what we believe is something beautiful. God is calling us to rise with courage and to pour into the next generation, equipping them to carry forward the race you have so faithfully begun. So we just want to say to you, thank you. Just before we jump in, let's take a moment and think about Israel. Whether you visited, lived there, or are just very familiar, let's be honest. When we say the word Israel to someone who've never heard of it before, they usually imagine camels, conflict, and maybe falafel. But we know there's more, so much more. Israel is the kind of place where a 3,000-year-old archaeological dig is happening right next to a high-speed light rail that's already behind schedule. It's where you can be hiking in the desert at sunrise and argue about Wi-Fi speed in Tel Aviv by lunch. It's a land of miracles, both historically and in the present.
Israel is tiny. You can drive from the top to bottom in about 6 hours, unless there's traffic, in which case, never mind, cancel your plans. But in that small space, you get a country that somehow packs in forests in the north, desert in the south, beaches in the middle, and construction everywhere. Everywhere, always. We're talking about a small country that didn't even exist 80 years ago and gave the world so much, including in the area of technology. Just thinking about traveling. PillCam, a tiny swallowable camera that travels through your digestive system, taking thousands of high-res images. And Mobileye, the brains behind many self-driving cars. Waze was invented there for a reason. Israeli drivers needed Waze more than anyone. Why? Because road signs are optional. Turn signals are a myth, and everyone drives like they're late for a baby naming ceremony.
There, you know it.
Merge is just a suggestion. So is stopping at red lights sometimes. Israel has the highest number of startups per capita in the world. But finding a parking spot in Tel Aviv, again, if you've been there, you know. Still the biggest innovation, challenge of all time, Shabbat elevators, the slowest ride of your life.
There's a lot of high-tech success, but Israel still runs on a few timeless principles. Coffee is essential, and no matter how secular someone is, they still know when the Shabbat starts and when it ends, and where they can find the best Friday challah. So with all that we think about when it comes to Israel, complicated, colorful, chaotic, and completely unique. Let's open our hearts to what's next and be encouraged. Because what we're about to hear isn't just news, it is good news. It's the kind of update that reminds us why we said yes to the calling in the first place. Please join me in welcoming from Jerusalem Patrick and Rebecca Verbeten.
Greetings from Jerusalem, the city of the great King. We are so excited to spend the next few moments with you, just sharing a little bit of our life and a little bit of God's heart for His land and for His people. We are in an incredible time here on the earth. And just yesterday, we had the opportunity to celebrate Simchat Torah, rejoicing with the Torah. And it was a very special day because something very special happened. The hostages came home. But I want to go back a couple years. I want to look 2 years ago on Simchat Torah. Rebecca, can you just remind everyone of where you were at 2 years ago?
I'm going to back up a little bit further and just remind you that first of all, we were celebrating Sukkot. So it's the time of year where we're celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles. The city, the entire country was covered with huts, as the Bible instructs the people of Israel to live in huts during this time of year. And then after Sukkot, the Jewish people move into the day of rejoicing in the Torah. And so it's a festive season. It's a season of a lot of hosting, a lot of celebration. And just when you think it's about to end, you have another high, and that is Simchat Torah. And so we woke up on October 7th, 2023, and the nation woke up to a Shabbat and ready to celebrate the Torah. But immediately we were met with Red Alert. Now, Red Alert is an app that most Israelis have that lets them know when rockets are coming into certain areas of the country. And so I looked at the Red Alert app and thought, oh, this is unfortunate because it's a holiday, right? But it wasn't unusual. And so I got my coffee and the Red Alert kept going off. And after the Red Alert came the alarms, which let us know that there were rockets coming into Jerusalem. And this was different. And we went into our safe room where we're supposed to wait out the siren. And then after the siren, you're supposed to wait for 10 minutes and then you can leave your safe room. We waited the 10 minutes, came out, but immediately there was another siren. And we ended up spending most of that morning in the safe room, watching news come across our WhatsApp feed that Hamas had invaded the country, that they had come into the kibbutzim, the neighboring communities around the Gaza border. They were in the homes of the people. We were hearing the most horrific stories of murder and rape and pillaging. And I want to say maybe the worst of all the news, and that was that they had taken hostages from among the communities there into Gaza.
And we know that most of you have been following this. You know what happened on October 7th. And we are so excited to stand here with you today in Jerusalem, where just 2 days ago, now, the day before Simchat Torah, 2 years after that terrible massacre on October 7th, the hostages came home.
Yes.
We have been praying. The USA, Bridges for Peace USA team has been praying. Our High teams have been praying. Our Night of Hope teams have been praying. We have been praying for the release of the hostages. And finally, 2 days ago, the hostages came home and we had the opportunity to represent Bridges for Peace in Petah Tikva, where we sponsored an event for the community to get flags and everything that they needed to welcome back their hostages. And so we want to just share a little bit from that moment.
So as you may or may not know, there were 20 living hostages, and an agreement was made that the 20 living hostages would be returned. The place where we stood in Petah Tikva was one of the hospitals that 5 of those 20 were being airlifted to for medical examination. And so we gathered together with the community. It was a joyous time It was celebration and dancing. They had a DJ. Everybody was singing the songs, the Israeli songs, just regular pop songs that you would hear on the radio. And then every 2 or 3 songs, they would go into another rendition of Am Yisrael Chai. Sometimes it felt like we were waiting forever. But as we waited, people danced, people celebrated, people hugged one another. They pulled out posters of some of the hostages that were coming to this center. We were able to see 3 helicopters arrive carrying 5 of the living. And let me tell you, the emotions that were felt as we knew they were exiting the helicopters and boarding vans, as the vans began to move from the helicopters to the emergency room, they stopped. And they didn't have to do this, but they opened up the doors and we saw pale, bony hands wave to the crowd. They were doing the heart symbol. They were raising their hands up to God and thanking the community there for praying for them. And then the door closed and they were taken to the hospital. It was unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was the answer to 2 years of praying and pleading and longing. And you all were a part of that as you prayed for 2 years for the release and the rescue of these hostages.
Talking about this right now just really has me choked up, because this was something that 2 years ago we witnessed the most tragic thing that we've ever experienced in our life. I guess we were just about to be married right before 9/11. Yeah. They were getting ready. We were in California, and of course that took America and the world by storm. Mm-hmm. And that was something that was devastating for our country. But we were living here in Israel on October 7th, and the amount of casualties was like a 9/11 or even greater based on the amount of people per capita. So it was absolutely devastating to be there and see these hostages come home, and the joy in the hearts of the Israelis, and there's still so much pain.
And everybody knew them by name and face. You all watching, you knew some of them by name and face. And people cried out for 2 years praying for them by name. And so in a sense, it was really like we were welcoming our loved ones, our long lost loved ones home.
I can't really put to words what that moment was like, but I know that you know in the spirit what it would be like when the lost return home. And if you've ever had a lost loved one or someone who has been away and you felt them come home, I imagine that is what it felt like. And here's what happened then that day. As the day went on, everybody was celebrating and joyous and partying, and then it was time to move into a Shabbat. Now, it wasn't Sabbath, it was Simchat Torah. But on Simchat Torah, it's treated like a Sabbath in regards to no work, no cooking, no driving, no lighting a fire, all of the traditional Orthodox ways of keeping a Shabbat. And so it went from extreme joy to a hush that fell over the whole country for the next 24 hours. And let me just tell you a little bit about Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah is the day where the Jewish people celebrate and rejoice the season of Torah. So just like you have all of the feasts, and we know that the feasts of the Lord run a cycle throughout the year, starting with Passover and finishing with Sukkot, and then right on the end of Sukkot is Simchat Torah. That's when the scroll is rolled back to the very beginning of the Torah, Genesis or Bereshit. And that's the week that we're in right now as we're recording this or watching this webinar. This is the Torah portion that we're in right now. We're in Bereshit. And you're all very familiar with Bereshit. This is in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so this is a very fitting place to start where we're at today with just a little bit of thoughts from this week's Torah portion regarding holidays, regarding Simchat Torah, and regarding what God is doing. So in this week's Torah portion, Bereshit, we go from the creation of the earth in the beginning, the creation of Adam and Eve, and then some of the most joyous words of all of the Torah. God looked at his creation and said that it was good. And then we go to the end of this week's Torah portion in Genesis chapter 6. The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth and saw everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. So we've got the most joyous and the saddest. And that just kind of reminds me of Simchat Torah, actually. We have in 2023 this terrible situation, this tension of the day that they're to rejoice in Torah is the day that the hostages came in and destroyed and killed and raped and pillaged. But then also on the day of Simchat Torah, this is the day that the hostages were released. And it was a day truly of rejoicing. And so one of the things that we get out of this week's Torah portion is we get the idea of Shabbat. Because when God created the heavens and the earth, and he created for 6 days, on the seventh day he rested. Let me read to you from Genesis 2 verse 1. So the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day God had finished his work of creation, so he rested from all of his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was a day when he rested from all work of creation. And so this is where we get the idea of Shabbat. And as we were thinking about our time here in Israel, it feels like we're back after 2 years. We've been gone almost 2 years, and now we're back. And we got here to Israel, and it feels like we never left. We always say that when we come back. It feels like we never left, and it really, in so many ways, does. The joy, the streets, the traffic, the tension. There's so many things about it, and it's like, in a way, we feel like we never left. Rebecca, can you just tell everybody what it was like celebrating Shabbat?
Oh my goodness. The best day of the year happening every week, ultimately. And I think when we were new in the land and we were just observers, it felt very distant. It felt like we were just looking in. But it didn't take long for it to kind of just swallow you up. And especially living in Jerusalem. Because in Jerusalem, on Friday morning, it begins a holiday hustle and bustle. So if you can think about Wednesday night before Thanksgiving in the United States, where everybody's doing their last minute. And you would think it would be stressful, but because something so good is coming, everybody's just filled with joy. And as they are interfacing with one another, wishing each other happy holiday, that's the way it is in Jerusalem on Friday morning. Most people have half of a work day because public transportation will shut down early. And so they're running their errands, they're getting their challah, they're getting it Friday morning so that it's fresh if they didn't make it at home. They're picking up treats to go with their dessert or something to bring home to their family. Husbands are picking up a bouquet of flowers. Ladies, if you can imagine getting a fresh bouquet of flowers every Friday. Oftentimes, while they're running around and running their errands, they're sitting in the outdoor cafes, and you just know that there's excitement stirring. And one of the beautiful things about it is that everybody is in on this excitement because everybody is getting ready to shut down. They're going to go home and prepare a nice meal, nicer than their Sunday through Thursday meal. They're probably going to invite some family or some friends over. At least that's what we did. Our house was always full on a Shabbat, on a Friday night, sitting around a table, getting ready to do the blessings. Traditionally, the mother will light the candles. The father will say blessings over the wife and over the children. And it really is a time of set-apartedness. It is a time made holy by the Lord. And it's unlike anything I've ever experienced since.
Yeah, and the thing is that how do we have never lived in Jerusalem? Really, Jerusalem is the most holy city in the world, But had we have never lived in Jerusalem, we wouldn't have fully experienced that Shabbat. And that actually makes me think about Adam and Eve in the garden, right? Because they walked and they fellowshiped with God when they were in the garden, right? So God ordained the time of rest, and then God fellowshipped with his creation in the garden. And so when we came to Jerusalem, we sort of began to experience, because the whole city shuts down, you kind of don't have a choice. Like, it's kind of forced upon you. And had it not been forced upon us, I don't know how we would have, done it, because we tried every once in a while in the United States to do it. And the funny thing is, let's think about this for a second. We experienced the holiness of Shabbat here in Jerusalem, but we had a hard time experiencing it outside of Jerusalem. And actually, this is where the story of creation goes. In Genesis chapter 3, after man and woman had sinned, the Lord said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, you are cursed. More than all the animals, domestic and wild, you will crawl on your belly, groveling in the dust as long as you live. And I will cause hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and the offspring after her. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel." And we know that this is the precursor to Jesus. This is the lineage of Jesus. And here, after man had sinned, the enemy was trying to separate man from God and eventually push them out of the garden. In Genesis 3, verse 23 says, "So the Lord God banished them from the Garden of Eden, and he set Adam out to cultivate the ground from which he had been made." They experienced the holiness of God in the garden. The enemy came in and lied to them and created a separation between man and God had to put them out of the garden. And this verse right here about he will strike your head and you will strike his heel, this is the crux of the reason that we're standing here today, because Hamas is trying to destroy and remove the people from the land of Israel. Really, this is what's happening. From the river to the sea means get the Jews out of Israel. From the river to the sea means death to the Jews. And I know that all of you who are watching this, you kind of know and you understand that. But we're starting to hear these ancient blood libels, or these even recent blood libels, rise up, and people are becoming anti-Semitic again, even in the United States. And it's because there's enmity between the seed of Adam, ultimately, which led to Jesus, and then God's covenant people. And there is a plan. God has a plan of redemption for the world, and he's bringing it about through his covenant people, the Jewish people. And the enemy knows that if he can erase the Jewish people off of the earth, then there will be no more, rest in the land. And so now we see that Adam and Eve were banished and put outside of the garden. And for many years, the Jewish people were outside of the land of Israel. There's always been a remnant here, but for many years, the Jewish people were spread to the four corners of the earth, just like was prophesied by the prophet Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And now there has been a great ingathering of the Jewish people here to the land of Israel, and they are celebrating Shabbat and all of the feasts again, like Simchat Torah. But here's the funny thing. We're not in Israel anymore. We live in Melbourne, Florida, and we are stuck with this dilemma. Are we going to celebrate Shabbat in Melbourne, Florida? What about Sukkot? What about Rosh Hashanah? Right? These are things that we never actually did when we lived in the United States. We only learned about them when we joined ourselves to the people of Israel and moved here. My expectation is that Probably the most of you don't, fully celebrate these holidays. Many of you probably try in your own way to do it, and that is good. I mean, we really commend that. And we have had to actually become very intentional. And so did the Jewish people, actually. They had to celebrate the feasts in the diaspora. Right? So celebrating the feasts outside of the land of Israel is much more difficult for the Jewish people than celebrating it inside the land of Israel. In fact, very common in the Jewish prayers is next year in Jerusalem. That's the Passover prayer every year. Next year in Jerusalem. L'shana haba'ah beYerushalayim. Next year in Jerusalem. And interestingly, when we moved to Israel, we wanted to keep our Christian holidays, our traditions. And so we celebrate Resurrection Sunday. And actually the place where we're filming this right now is where we would gather together with other believers. And we would celebrate the resurrection right here overlooking the old city, the Mount of Olives, where Jesus is going to return to. I mean, what a place to be able to celebrate the resurrection of the Messiah. But you know what? There's no day off on Resurrection Sunday in Jerusalem because it's not a Jewish holiday. There's no day off on Christmas in Israel because it's not a Jewish holiday. They don't even take Thanksgiving off. And so we had to fight really hard to even keep our own traditions. And now here's what we're doing. We're back in the United States and we're fighting hard to keep our traditions that we learned while we were here. So we just celebrated Rosh Hashanah. Tell them a little bit about how we celebrated Rosh Hashanah.
Well, like Patrick said, we are striving to keep the traditions that we learned during our time here in Israel. And so, kind of just making it up as we go. We had some friends over. We had a big feast where we ate a lot of sweet food. If you've never been to a Rosh Hashanah dinner, everything is sweet so that we can welcome in a sweet new year. We cooked actually one of the recipes from our Jewish family during our time here. And we brought it to our table in Melbourne, Florida. We played games that reflected God's kingship. We told stories that reflected God's kingship. We did blessings in our own Christian way, just giving reverence to the holiday of the Feast of Trumpets.
One of the great opportunity, my favorite people here in Israel is David Krupman. And David has just been a longtime friend of ours. When Rebecca was at home on October 7th, 2023, on that terrible, terrible day, I was out hiking on the Israel National Trail. And that's a 1,000 kilometer hike all the way from the top of Israel, all the way down to the bottom of Israel. You could do it either way, but I started at the top. And I was hiking on the hardest day of the trail on October 7th. And I had no idea what was going on. I didn't have cell service. I didn't know what was going on. And when Rebecca finally got a hold of me, she said, "Patrick, you got to come home. It's been terrible." And I said, "We've been through this before." And she said, "You don't know how bad it is." But then she didn't just leave it there. She had David Krupman call me up and just tell me, "You need to get back." And for whatever reason, I listened to him. Maybe because, he's lived here longer than me. I don't know. Anyway, David is a great friend of probably many of you and of ours. And David wrote a book called Your Sabbath Invitation, where he encourages Christians to do one thing to keep the Sabbath. Maybe put your phone down for a couple hours, or maybe get around the table on Friday night and eat a meal together instead of, doing it in front of the television or rushing off to activities. Just take a time set apart. It's in Israel, it's called a moed or a moedim. It's the times that are set apart, and just take a little time and set it apart. Are we going to be able to, Melbourne, Florida does not close on Saturdays. And most of the communities that you live in, they don't close on Saturday, they don't close on Sunday anymore. And if we're not intentional about keeping you see, the idea of resting on the seventh day, it starts in Genesis, but it carries on all the way through the 10 Commandments, right? And then, because we're supposed to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, so we as Christians believe that those 10 Commandments are ways that we should live our life. We apply most of them to our life. I mean, we would agree that most of them are things that we want to do. And then we said, okay, so we're going to do this on Sunday. But for whatever reason, life creeps in, and it's got a way of sort of trying to rob us of that fellowship with God. That's really what it's trying to do. And then we see it all the way through to Jesus teaching about the Shabbat and how to live it, the heart of the Shabbat, right? Saying that the Shabbat was made for man, not man for the Shabbat. So this is really actually a gift that God has created for us. And we need to just take a little bit of time and think about it and be intentional about it. That's the thing about all these holidays. It's intentionality.
Yeah.
Right? You got to prepare. That's why there's special foods and special prayers and things like that. It's about being intentional.
Yeah.
It's really about stopping and thinking. Every holiday, the feasts of the Lord, all 7 of them, are all images of what God is doing on the earth. And they cause you to stop and to remember the goodness of God. And so I just want to share one more verse from the end of this week's portion, and it's just so life-giving. It says, Enoch lived 365 years walking in close fellowship with God. Then one day he disappeared because God took him. In spite of all the terrible things that were going on in the world, Cain and Abel and the Nephilim and the war and the destruction and the death that was going on, the things that made God even sad with his own creation, there was a man that outside of the garden walked so close to God that God just took him away.
Yeah.
Think about that for a minute. It actually doesn't really matter where you live. Is it easier to celebrate and walk in fellowship with God when you're in the garden? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe for you were part of a church and everything was right in that church, but now you're not in that church anymore. Or maybe you were part of a family and you've lost a loved one or a family member and everything is not right the way that it used to be. There's a lot of scenarios that try to take us out of the fellowship of God. But think about Enoch for a moment. Outside of the garden, the first man kind of outside of the garden that actually lived righteously, so righteously that God just said, I'm going to take you home to be with me. There's no recollection of his death.
I have a pastor who said it this way once. They walked so closely and for so long that at one point God just said, Enoch, my home is closer than yours. Come with me.
Listen, in the days that we're living in, the world is getting darker. You don't have to even be that aware to see that the world is getting darker. Things are getting crazier. And yet, the presence and the Spirit of God is hovering around the world, and it is accessible and it is ready for each and every one of us to fellowship with. But we've got to stop and we've got to make a little bit of time. We've got to open up our hearts and make a little bit of room for the Lord to come in so that we can pause from our craziness, from the things that are grabbing at us, so that we can receive the presence of God in our life. And so that's my prayer for you today, is that you would take a pause. Think about the feasts of the Lord. They're not the Jewish feasts. I know that it feels a little bit awkward. You know what? That feeling of awkwardness goes back to that fall. It goes back to that tension that was put between the enemy and mankind. And so the enemy has actually robbed the feasts of the Lord from us, really. Yeah. He has taken it and pulled it out of the church, and there was a huge separation from something that we were never supposed to really be separated from. And I don't have a religious way of celebrating all of these feasts. I just think it's important to read what God says in His Word and think about it and take a little bit of time and pray about it. The Jewish people have preserved the calendar, so we know exactly when they are every year, and I think that that's pretty accurate. I'm sure there's probably some dispute somewhere, but it's very accurate, so we can know when Passover is and when Pentecost is, Shavuot, Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah. We can know when these things are, and we can open up the Bible and think about what God did and how good He is. And if God has done so many good things for His people Israel and kept His covenant with them, God is going to do good things for you. Yeah. I believe that with all of my heart. And you know what? We've got some exciting good things coming up. Bridges for Peace USA is got 2026 is going to be a packed year. It is going to be an absolutely exciting year filled with the goodness of God. God is going to take us to the nation, to the United States, and we are going to travel. Our goal is to spend 100 days traveling on the road, and we actually want to come to your church. We want to come and be a part of what God is doing in your community, in your home fellowships, in your Sunday school classes. We want to be a part of what God is doing in your life. And so just keep your eye out for emails, because we'll start telling you where we're going to go and what areas we're going to be. We want to come and we want to teach about Shabbat, or we want to teach about Israel. We want to talk about the war and politics and tell stories. Those are all things that we want to do just to encourage you and encourage your community. So we want you to know that we want to come and visit with you, hopefully in 2026. If we do 100 days in 26, maybe we do another 127, maybe we'll get to all of you.
So contact us if you feel like there's an open door in your community, because we want to begin with people who we know and love and who already know and love Israel.
Okay, so something exciting coming up. The first thing that is exciting and is coming up is in February of 26, end of February 26. But we're going to also send out an email if you're interested. We are going to have a Field and Family Summit in Melbourne, Florida. So we're going to call everybody from the field who wants to be a part of the team. We're going to bring in great teachers. We're going to spend time in fellowship. We're going to spend time in prayer. We're going to pray for Israel. We're going to pray for each other. We're going to strategize, and we're going to come up with a plan to reach our nation with God's heart for Israel.
Listen, we know that being Israel people is sometimes very lonely. We know that we have teams scattered across the country, and we hear so many times how blessed they are when we're able to come together. And so we're going to come together. Mark your calendars, February 19th through the 21st. If you want more information and you say, I really want to be a part of that, reach out to us, but you will be receiving more information. And we want this to be a time of refreshing. We want this to be a time of iron sharpening an iron. We want this to be a time where you get to meet people that maybe you've only seen across the computer screen in Zoom meetings, and you can get face to face and pray for one another, encourage one another. And like Patrick said, where we can equip you so that you can spend another year standing boldly for Israel.
The next big event we have coming up is the Institute of Israel Studies, which is in the end of May. And this is a time where people from around the world come to Israel to be trained and equipped with all of the tools that you need to be a rock solid representative for Israel. This is a kind of education and training that is, it's at a college level. It's hands-on, it's practical. You hear from Jewish teachers, rabbis, politicians, all kinds of people that come in and they teach about God's heart for Israel, and they equip you so that you can go back to your country, go back to the United States, be a part of our team, and that you can go and make a difference.
Now, some of you have already done the Institute of Israel Studies before, and we have had people repeat it. We want you to know that this is the year to repeat if you've ever done it before. We're being told that this is going to be a red carpet year. We've seen the world change, and so we need to be ready to engage with the changing world. So if you've done the Institute before, we invite you come back. If you haven't done the Institute before, we invite you to join us and join with representatives from the nations. We have offices in 8 different nations. If you're not aware of that, it's not just the United States. We have brothers and sisters who are standing with Israel and the Jewish people in 8 different nations. So come and gather together with the offices from the 8 different nations to be trained and then sent home so that you can be a bold voice for Israel in your nation.
Okay, and then coming up in the fall, we have the Verbeten Friends and Family Tour. Rebecca and I are going to take all of you and all of our friends from every church that we've ever ministered at or been a part of, and we're going to get as many people as we can to come and see all of our favorite places in Israel.
So 2026 is a big year for the Verbetens. This year we will celebrate 25 years of marriage. This year, I will turn 50, and then 4 days into 2027, Patrick will turn 50. So we're going to scoot him on into 2026. And when we talked about how we want to celebrate this big year, we said the one thing we want the most is to bring our friends and our family and our field team home to Israel with us. We want to take you to our favorite sites. We want to introduce you to our friends who have become family. We want to sit in the places where God has ministered to us so deeply and allow him to minister to you so deeply. And we're going to end our tour with an anniversary celebration. So we invite you to celebrate 25 years of marriage, 25 years of ministry together with us here in Jerusalem. So look for those dates, look for information, and coming up soon, we're going to start laying out that plan, meeting together with those of you who are interested, and getting the ball rolling and planning on being here together next year at this time.
Okay, and then we've got one more thing that is super exciting that we are going to roll out in 2026, and we need you to help us make this happen. It won't happen without you. It's the Zealous USA Intern Program.
So if you've been following us the past 3 or 4 months, you know that God has really stirred our hearts intently about engaging, I'm calling them the now generation, young millennials, Gen Z, even older Gen Alpha. The work that we're doing in Israel is too important to let it go. Engaging with the Jewish communities in the United States is too important to let it go. And so we are bringing interns to Melbourne, Florida for a 9-month program. This is going to be a program unlike any other. In those 9 months, they're going to have 2 trips to Israel. They're going to begin with the Institute of Israel Studies, where they are going to be trained alongside those of you who join us. They're going to receive all of that teaching so that they can return to the United States and travel across the country with Patrick and me. 100 days on the road, going to churches, going to college campuses, engaging with Christian students on Bible campuses so that we can train them about what God says about Israel and the Jewish people. We're going to be building relationships with Jewish students on secular universities because, as you know, the Jewish students on our college campuses have been under extreme anti-Semitism. We are going to come around them as Christian friends and encourage them to be bold, encourage them to be courageous, and stand beside them and guard them if and when that needs to be done. In addition to that, we're going to be doing a lot of content creation. This is the language that this digital generation speaks. And so we're going to get them in and allow them to use their creative juices, allow them to put out creative, powerful pieces on all social media platforms, allow them to go and speak in churches and on college campuses, allow them to interface, train them in the Bridges for Peace ethos. They're going to be trained in how to run a not-for-profit organization through networking, through fundraising, through development. It is going to be 9 months of really empowering young people and then commissioning them so that they can go out to their communities, and wherever they end up in life, they will always be a bold voice for Israel and the Jewish people. And then we'll do it again with another team of young people for another 9 months.
And here's how you can help with that. You can recommend your children and your grandchildren to be a part of this, 18 to 30-year-old age, either before or after university. We're looking for people with skills, especially in the media departments and in the public speaking departments, whether they're going to be in front of a camera or behind a camera. These are things that we need. So you know if this could fit for one of the young people that you love. This is all going to be word of mouth, really. We're going to start with 2 young people, and we're going to hopefully grow to 4 and to 6 and to 8, and then ultimately up to 12. And then the other thing that you can do is that you can give. We have a Raising a Remnant Capital fundraising campaign, and you can give to help young people come and be a part of this program. And so we want to say thank you so much for all that you are doing. You are the people that are Bridges for Peace USA. All of these initiatives, all of the things that we're doing is because you all stand with us and stand with Israel. And so we want to say from Jerusalem, the city of the great King, thank you so much. Goodbye.
How awesome was that?
Yeah.
And hearing about all the exciting things coming up in 2026 makes one a bit jealous, seeing that background of Jerusalem and how great it would be to be there right now with all the excitement regarding the recent release of the hostages.
Before we close out our time together today, we want to let you know of one last thing. Very soon we will be sending out our year-end giving, and we want to encourage you to pray and ask the Lord about how you can stand and support Israel and the Jewish people through Bridges for Peace. Be on the lookout for our buck slip in the mail coming soon. We want to thank you for partnering with us to close out this year strong and to have the biggest impact and reach in 2026, supporting Israel and building relationships between Christians and Jews.
With all that, we want to pray for you and commit this time to the Lord. Father, thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to share this moment together online. I pray that you will give all of us a sweet blessing right now, your favor, and we want to thank you for your unconditional love. Be with each and every one, we pray, in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.